Let's go. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Shannon Hargrove with the Career Team, and this is Get Hired Bootcamp. It's session 2, preparing targeted resumes and cover letters. Let me just advance for a second. This is a series. If it's your first time, welcome. We're excited to have you join us today. We have 4 sessions. One took place last week. This is our second, and 2 more ahead of us next Wednesday and the following, covering different topics to help you prepare for your job search and take action for your internship or job search. We want to remind you that if you would like to participate, you can earn a badge, a digital badge, for attending and completing our assessment for 3 or more of the sessions. And in order to have your attendance count, I'm going to show you a bit.ly. And one of my trusty teammates on here is going to put this link in the chat as well. And if you just complete this at the end of our session, and we'll remind you also, then you will be counted in your attendance towards earning the badge. So again, attending 3 out of the 4 sessions, or 4 out of 4 is good too. Complete this and we will give you a digital badge to show your completion.
Are you going to send it to any place? Because I came last week, but I didn't see this to complete it. We do at the end of the 4 sessions?
Yes, each session. There'll be a different link.
Oh, I didn't do last week because I didn't see anything. Though.
Okay, hold on. What is your name? I don't see you.
Candy?
Say it again.
Candy.
Andy?
Candy.
Candy. Yeah. Okay, we can send you your last name.
IDDRISU.
Okay, we'll send you last week's link.
Okay.
Okay.
Can you send me last week's link as well, please? I'm Jasmine Belingi.
Whoever needs last week's link, can you put a note in the chat? And I'll take that down. Okay. Perfect. So I'm going to hand it over to my team member, Sarah Shepard, and she's going to introduce today's session and our guest speaker.
Wonderful. Thank you, Shannon. So I'm Sarah Shepard. I'm the Employer Relationship Manager at Mercy College. And we have a special guest here today. We have Melissa Strauss. She's the HR Manager at PKF O'Connor Davies. She's also a member of the Westchester Human Resource Management Association. She comes to us with a wealth of HR knowledge, and she's here to share kind of what she's learned from the recruiting side to tell you what not to do and what to do during the hiring process. So we will hand the floor over to Melissa when she's ready.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here and I see a bunch of faces on the screen, which is awesome, and really excited to get a chance to speak with you. So just really quick, so the Westchester Human Resource Management Association, I sit on the board of directors, and for anybody that is looking for additional resources, especially during this time of COVID and all the challenges in our environment, there are a lot of resources available there as well in terms of just basic HR support, resume, mock interviewing, and so on. So I just wanted to put that quick plug in there as well if you are looking for additional resources. And I'm ready for the next slide. And so again, I come with a very vast experience in talent acquisition management and recruiting. In my current role at PKF O'Connor Davies, I am the lead of campus recruiting, which is everything from leadership programs to internship programs firm-wide to entry-level staffing. So I spend a lot of time looking at resumes and cover letters and all the sort. And usually I just wanted to kick off today's session considering this phrase here, and I'll read it to you on the screen here. And the phrase is, vigorous writing is concise. A sentence should contain no unnecessary words, a paragraph no unnecessary sentences, for the same reason that a drawing should have no unnecessary lines and a machine no unnecessary parts. This requires not that the writer make all his sentences short or that he avoid all detail and treat his subject only in outline, but that every word tell. And this was spoken by William Strunk back in 1918 rather. And if you can believe it, still rings true today in 2020, very relevant. And very relevant to today's topic, which is resume development, targeted resume development and cover letters. And what it comes down to, if you want to go ahead and click the space bar here, what it comes down to is, what's the goal of a resume or a cover letter? It's to present yourself well and quickly. So very relevant to today's topic. Okay. And so the question I probably get most commonly from all levels of candidates, whether you're a student or just graduated or whatever the case may be, one of the first questions I get is, what do recruiters look for on your resume? And so I'm going to put a quick disclaimer here. This is just one recruiter's opinion. There's no one right way to present yourself on a resume. These are just some best practices. And it's important to consider, like, if you are working with a career center, or if you're working with a mentor or an advisor, or somebody that's telling you something different, there's no 100% right way to do a resume. So these are just some best practices. So take that for what you will. So what do we look for? With that said, what are we looking for? Obviously, we are looking for a strong academic background. We want to know, that you have the fundamental skills and the knowledge to help you be successful in that role. Oftentimes that's indicated through the GPA, so we do recommend that you have the GPA listed there. We're also looking for extracurricular activities, and these can come in a wide variety of ways, whether that's community service, if you're an athlete, if you're involved in Greek life, whatever the case may be, whatever you're passionate about, and anything that would be outside of your academic kind of baseline, we do recommend that you list them there. There are so many opportunities to grow and develop a skill set that could be exemplified through those extracurricular activities and kind of presenting yourself as a well-rounded candidate. We also, of course, look for affiliations with professional clubs and societies. So similar to the extracurriculars, we are looking for somebody who's involved, and this kind of gives you that extra professional edge. It is a strong indicator that you are committed to whatever field you're pursuing if you have the ability to affiliate with a professional club. Thank you. Relevant internship and work experience. I mean, obviously, if you have experiences that are directly relevant in your field, you absolutely need to list them on your resume. I would also argue that maybe non-relevant skills or experiences are equally important. Again, there are so many transferable skills that can be, moved over into whatever opportunity you're looking for. But for sure, if you have relevant skills or internships, definitely list them. And then, of course, leadership. So leadership, is a strong indicator that you're a team player, that you have assumed responsibility, that you're willing to kind of step into a new role and critically think and solve problems. So love to see that leadership on the resume as well. Go ahead. Thank you. So when you're building your resume, I get a ton of questions. And again, there are a ton of different formats that we're seeing in regards to resumes. A huge question I get is regarding objective statements. Do you need an objective statement? And the answer is maybe. So necessarily you don't have to have one. It's not a huge detriment if it's not listed there. Some people will recommend that you have one because it gives you the opportunity to tell the recruiter what exactly you're looking for. So if you're looking for an internship, you can very directly state that in your objective statement. I'm looking for a summer internship in this field, whatever the case may be. Or if you're graduated, you could say recent graduate looking for entry-level opportunity in XYZ field. So it's a very direct way to communicate to the recruiter what you're looking for. We do recommend that you list your academic degrees separately. So even if you achieve them at the same institution, we do recommend that you list them separately to indicate that you have an advanced degree. If you do, if not, you don't have to worry about it. Describe your progress towards your graduation as well. Oftentimes we see this demonstrated in your expected graduation date. This is really, really helpful. Obviously, if you've recently graduated, you can indicate that you just graduated, or if you're on target to graduate in the next year, or if you're graduating in a winter month, whatever the case may be, it gives the recruiter a time frame. So for example, if you're applying to jobs in March, but you're a student and you're not graduating until May, the recruiter needs to know when you're going to be eligible for that full-time employment opportunity. So that's very, very helpful to see there. List any relevant experience, leadership, and extracurricular activities, which we already talked about, the benefit of listing those. list computer skills, or I'm also going to broaden that and say technical skills that are relevant to your job. It is a great way to indicate that you have a skill set that might be different from some of the other people that are vying for the same opportunity as you. So that could be really helpful and kind of set you apart from colleagues and such. And then another question that I get a lot is, should you include your hobbies and interests? Again, the answer is maybe. If you have the space, if you're looking, like, for example, if you're a little bit light on work experience and you want to put something at the bottom of the resume to fill out the space, you could list it there. It does come up in conversation sometimes once you get to interviewing, but you don't need it. For example, if you're really trying to limit your resume to like one page, for example, you don't have to have this section in there. If you do choose to include the hobbies and interests section, we just encourage you, of course, to avoid any controversial interests. Keep them relevant to the position that you're applying for, just to kind of streamline the process there. So targeting your resume using keywords. So this is becoming even more relevant in today's world where companies are using AI, artificial intelligence, to help with the beginning screening process. Not all companies will use a screening software program in order to make the official, like a first screen of qualified candidates, but some companies do, and it's important for you to be aware of that. So how can you use some of those keywords if you are dealing with that type of scenario? Review the job description. And listen, we understand that if you're applying for an internship or an entry-level full-time job, you're probably applying to multiple positions at the same time. If that's the case, that's totally fine, that's expected, but be familiar with the job description for which you're applying to. And that will help you identify some of those key phrases that you could potentially, put into your resume that will help with that scanning software process. The one thing that I will say is make sure that that keyword is relevant to the experience that you have. You don't want to put a keyword on your resume if it's not an experience or a skill set that you have. So just making sure that you're being accurate with the keywords. Don't just put a keyword just to put a keyword. Make sure that it's relevant to your experience. Other examples of specific skills to include would be anything in the Microsoft suite, so Excel, Word, Outlook, PowerPoint, whatever the case may be, and just making sure, again, that you are designing your resume potentially for skimmability, but making sure that it's accurate and true to the experience that you have. Resume tips, so spell and grammar check. I always like to tell candidates your resume is a professional indication of who you are. So if that's the case, you don't want there to be spelling errors on there. You don't want there to be grammar errors on there. So just make sure that you take the time to double check and proofread. Keep it simple. I mentioned earlier, we've been seeing some more, I would say, creative formats of resumes, and that's totally fine if you are in a creative field. So if you're in marketing, if you're in graphic design, if you're in something that has a creative niche, it makes sense for you potentially to have a different format if that works for you. If you are working in the business environment, for example, we do typically still suggest that you stay to what we call the traditional format. And so just keep it simple, make it easy for that recruiter to read through and find all the relevant information that they need to determine whether or not you're a good fit. That includes keeping it simple with your font, your size, etc., not only the format. Keep your resume to one page if possible. Again, that's going to depend on your experience and all your different skill sets and things like that. Kind of an interesting fact, I just learned this, one of my interns actually told me this not too long ago. Elon Musk has a one-page resume. So whether or not you agree with him in his, what he does, he's very arguably a successful person. And if he can keep his resume to one page, probably so can you. So again, it's not the end of the world if it's 2 pages, that's going to depend on your skill set and your experience. But if you do, if you can, it's oftentimes easy to keep it to 1 page. So for example, if you're at a career fair or something like that and somebody drops their stack of resumes, they can find your resume in 1 page. So it's pretty easy. Design it for skimmability, which we already spoke about, using those keywords. Similarly, don't make it too wordy. No recruiter wants to read a novel when they're trying to get through and see what your essential skill set is. So make sure that it is concise. We spoke about that at the beginning of the presentation as well. So design it for skimmability. List your most recent experience first. We oftentimes will recommend that if you are still a student, that your education will go to the top of your resume. Once you are no longer a student, you can move it to the bottom, which is indicating that you're no longer an active student. Now, that's not a hard set rule. It's just something that we've been seeing as a trend. But regardless of where you put your education, make sure that when you're talking about your experience, if you're doing a chronological resume format, that your top experience listed is your most relevant, and your most recent rather. And then just as a reminder, everything on your resume is fair game. I'm sure, you know, when you guys, I think interviewing is a topic in the bootcamp series a little bit later here. So I'm sure they'll talk about that when you get there, but everything on your resume is fair game. So you'll hear the word fluff used a lot. Don't add fluff, just to add it in there. Make sure that everything on your resume is a true and accurate representation of yourself and your skill set. So don't add things on there just because you think it makes you look impressive. Make sure that it is accurate to your skill set, because once you get to that interview, they will probably ask you about that. So make sure that you understand everything on your resume is fair game. And then, of course, review your resume and be able to discuss in depth your experiences, you know, and so on. So very important. Finishing touches, I said this before, I'll say it 10,000 times, proofread your resume, whether that's having your career department center review it, maybe it's having your advisor, your friend, your parents, whoever, you know, whoever's nearby, send them a copy of a resume, ask them to read it through. Again, that is a professional representation of yourself. So your resume needs to be error-free as much as possible. Save it as a PDF. We do oftentimes recommend that if you are sending your resume electronically, that you do send it as a PDF, because sometimes when you send it, the formatting in like a Word document can get jumbled. So if you save it in a PDF, it kind of freezes it in place. So we do recommend that you send it as a PDF. And then keep the information current. For students and recent graduates, you know, for students, I recommend every semester, just look through your resume and see if anything has changed, whether that's relevant coursework, whether that's an internship. Just take a look at it every semester just to stay on top of it. It is so much easier to remember your experiences from a few weeks ago versus, you know, a year ago. Like, oh gosh, what did I do in that work experience, or what was that group project like? It can be really hard to remember. So make sure that you keep your information current, update it periodically. Again, recommend for students every semester. If you're no longer a student, just update it whenever you have, you know, a change or a new experience or something else that could be relevant to the resume. Sending your resume. So again, especially in today's time and, you know, day and age, we're doing a lot of things virtually, electronically. So as a general recommendation, we recommend not to send documents that are not required. So very oftentimes the recruiter will tell you exactly what type of documentation they need. Do they need your resume? Do they need your cover letter? Do they need transcripts, a letter of reference or recommendation? They will tell you what they need. If they don't need something, don't send it to them. They'll ask you for it if they need it at a later time. If you are sending your resume in email, make sure to be formal. I cannot tell you how many times I have just found an attached resume with no context. I didn't know the person, I just get a resume out of the blue. That's great, but I don't know what position you're applying for. I don't know what your intentions are. I don't know. So make sure that if you are sending it via email, be formal. We always encourage you to err on the side of formality, Mr., Mrs., whatever, you know, the greeting is. Make sure that it's formal as a term of respect. And then, you know, you can adjust that if they tell you you can later down the road if you are working with a recruiter. But, you know, just be formal and provide context. Don't just send a resume out of the blue. Another huge thing, send your resume from a professional email address. I cannot tell you how many times I have gotten a resume from soccer girls and basketball dudes and all those other type of emails. And listen, it is okay to have those personal email addresses. That's totally fine. But when you're sending a professional document like a resume, send it from a professional email address. You know, just use your first and last name or whatever, you know, whatever suits you, but just make sure it's professional. And then never send your resume to numerous employers in the same email. Big no-no. So listen, recruiters are not blind to the fact that you are probably applying for multiple positions. We encourage you to find the great fit for you, like definitely apply to multiple positions, just not in the same email, okay? And if you are, listen, a lot of people, they want to figure out their wording that they want to say to the employer, right? So that means that you might have a template. This is a template that I send to a recruiter or an employer, but just make sure that that's just the template. And then that when you are actually sending the email, that you make it personal to the position that you're applying for, to the company that you're applying for. I work in public accounting. I have gotten resumes saying that they're so excited to work for a Big Four, Deloitte or something like that. I'm a mid-sized firm. I am not Deloitte. So it just kind of rubs the employer or the recruiter the wrong way, especially if it's a competitor. So just make sure that you take the time. It's totally fine to have that template, but just personalize it when you are actually sending the email. And then, of course, don't send it to numerous employers at the same time. Even if you BCC it, sometimes people reply all, and then it can just be a giant mess. So just one employer at a time. And then that gets us to cover letters. So I mentioned before, there are a lot of documents that recruiters might ask you to provide. Again, letters of recommendation, any type. I've even talked to recruiters that will ask people to provide writing samples, whatever the case may be. So only send the document that they're asking for, but oftentimes that will include a cover letter. And cover letters are a great way to, again, concisely, quickly kind of represent yourself and the type of opportunities that you're looking for and how you are a good fit for that potential opportunity. So when it comes to cover letters, write a fresh cover letter for each job, just as we were talking about in the emails. Very similarly, it's okay to have a cover letter template. If you find that you're presenting yourself in a really great way, that's okay. Personalize it. Take the time to personalize that cover letter for whatever company that you are applying for. Include the hiring manager's name if you know it. It's a nice personal touch that will go a long way. It oftentimes indicates that you've taken the extra time to learn a little bit about the company, the position, and the recruiter who is responsible for that role. Start with an attention-grabbing opening line, especially, it's such a great way to, I think, creatively represent yourself. Make it attention-grabbing. Get them excited about not only reading the rest of your cover letter, but about reading your resume. What a great way to ensure that recruiter is going to review your entire resume and be excited about considering you for that opportunity. And then highlight the right experiences and showcase your skills. Again, this kind of goes back into what I was saying about personalizing it for that job. Highlight how you are going to be the best fit for that role. Don't make the recruiter connect the dots. Connect the dots for them. Make it very clear. Hey, this is what I can bring to the table. This is how I am a great fit for this company, and this is how I think I could be successful both for the company and personally. So, great way to do that. Don't let the fear of bragging get in your way. When I talk to a lot of students, this is one of the huge things that they say to me that they struggle with in writing cover letters. They're like, oh, well, I feel like I'm tooting my own horn, or I feel like I'm bragging, or whatever. This is the perfect opportunity for you to brag. This is the perfect opportunity, again, to highlight your skill set, make it very clear on how you are the best candidate for that job. And then keep it short and sweet, but finish strong. So that always means, again, we don't want to read a novel when we're reading a cover letter. Be concise, but make your point. Finish strong. Make sure that you are taking the time to, again, make it abundantly clear to that recruiter, hey, I am a great candidate for this role. This is what I have to offer for the company. Consider me. You know what I mean? So it's such a good way to do that. And that is my very short abbreviated version. There's so much more that we could talk about, resume development, cover letters, but I just wanted to keep it short and sweet. But I'm happy to answer. Is the way that we're, maybe Sarah or who else, Shannon, you can tell me too, are we taking questions in the chat function? Do we have time for that? What does that look like?
Yeah, we definitely have time for questions. Thank you so much, Melissa. That was amazing.
Thanks.
So guys, I see one question in the chat so far, but feel free to put additional questions, or you can always unmute as well. We can definitely have that. So I'll start with the first question from Courtney. What is an example of an attention-grabbing opening line?
That's a good question. I think it's dependent on your field that you're looking to get in. I see a lot of, I'm assuming we're talking about a cover letter here. I think probably the very common, I guess, way that I see people starting cover letters is, hi, my name is XYZ and I'm a recent graduate of this college. And listen, that's totally okay, you know, if that's what you're comfortable with. But in terms of an attention grabbing, I guess, statement, it's going to be dependent on your style, you know, but I think probably within the first few sentences, it's good to indicate what you're interested in pursuing, or what, you know, just, you have to be creative. And so I can't give you like a standard approach, like a one blanket approach. This is a great opportunity for you to use your creative writing skills, for you to, again, think out of the box in terms of, okay, how can I set myself apart from the rest of the people that might be vying for the same opportunity? So sorry, I can't give you a better example, but I think, again, to your personality and to your skill set, this is a great way to show them, go the extra mile and say, hey, look at me, I'm qualified.
Right,
Melissa,
exactly.
Melissa, can I just add to that, that oftentimes an elevator pitch, we do a lot of work with students. Would you agree that that might be a good way to just leverage on the elevator pitch of who I am, what I'm great at, what I'm looking for? Okay.
Absolutely. And if you already have that elevator pitch, listen, you will be a step ahead of the people that are vying for the same opportunities, because you know who you are, you know what you want, and you know how you're going to go get it. So absolutely. Thank you, Julia.
Okay. And one of the things I always think about with an attention grabbing line is, why is an employer hiring? Because they have a problem of some sort. So how are you going to fix their problem? So if you tell them immediately off the bat what you're going to do to make their lives easier, then that would definitely grab their attention.
Absolutely.
And Melissa, I have a question. My name is Donna Winkler. You mentioned earlier about strong academic background. What about church affiliation or religious? Do we go there or no, or advocacy or supporters?
Donna, you just broke up a little bit. I didn't hear the latter part of the question. Can you repeat it?
I was asking, you mentioned earlier about the strong academic background when you were saying that wonderful speech. And my question is, what about church affiliations or anything religious or any advocacy supporters? And the reason why I'm saying is it could be a nonprofit, profit, but they're very essential, especially in my life as being a mature woman, woman who's going into the industry. Mm-hmm. And my second question on top of that is, do we also talk about caregivers? Because you have no idea, even the younger folks now are being in the caregiving position of their parents.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that probably
we're missing generations or what have you.
Yeah, no, it's a great question, Donna. I think, so your first question is about like religious affiliation. If that is something that you would identify as your extracurricular, I think that's totally appropriate to, like, for example, if you spend a lot of time giving back to your community through that, if it's something you're passionate about, I think it would be very appropriate under what I call them extracurriculars, but anything that you're involved in and passionate about outside of, you know, your academic kind of skill set, I think is appropriate to list there. Again, we want to be mindful of, like, if it's something that might be seen as controversial, I think we need to be careful about that. But that's going to kind of, you know, you are giving a representation of yourself. And if those are things that you're passionate about, absolutely, then your resume is an okay place to put that. And then your second question, I think, was about like caregiving. I think that that could come into play, particularly in like a cover letter. So you could say something like, you know, as somebody who has worked and had to be the primary care person for this person in my family, I know what it means to work hard. You know, that'd be a perfect way to put that in there and indicate, hey, I have responsibilities outside of work, outside of school, whatever the case may be. And you can give a really strong testament to your work ethic, to your dedication, and, you know, just to kind of set you up in that way.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Good question. Thank you.
Thank you, Donna. Good to see you here again.
Thank you.
Next question from Jake Friedman. He says, I'm on my second career. I have work experience that goes back 15 years, but most of it isn't related to the new career. How should I frame that on my resume?
That's a great question. And just to share a little side story with you, that's my experience as well. So my background is in teaching. my undergraduate degree is in education. I taught in public schools before I got into HR. So I've been through it. So I can tell you firsthand on how to handle that. So if you are somebody who is switching careers, the objective statement, that top statement at the top of your resume, is a great place to indicate that. I would also say the cover letter is a great way to indicate that, and highlight how your transferable skills would, go from your previous career into your new one. Like, hey, in my previous experience as XYZ, I learned this, this, and this, and that is transferable and relevant to this position that I'm applying for. And then going back to the objective statement, this is a great opportunity. You are indicating to that recruiter, hey, recent career change, looking for opportunities in whatever field you're looking for. So this is particularly important if you have made a career change, because to your point, the recruiter is going to read that resume and say, oh, this is not maybe, this is different from the position that they're applying for. And so if you make it abundantly clear in that objective statement, they will be like, okay, I understand now. And especially if you have the education to support that career change, they'll connect the dots and say, okay, they had previous experience here, they went back to school, they got this degree, now they're looking for this. And I think that that's a great way to do it.
Awesome, thank you.
Can I jump in with a follow-up to that? Do you use objective statement and summary statement interchangeably, or do you identify them as two different approaches for the resume?
That's a great question. I typically see them as separate. So an objective statement is saying, this is what I'm looking for. This is the purpose of which I'm applying for a position. A summary statement or a summary section would, in my mind, would highlight the skill set that would be relevant to the position that they're applying for. So a summary, dedicated, hard worker, self-starter, those are all summary of skills that you have. Whereas the objective statement to me is, this is what I'm applying for this reason. Does that make sense?
Yes. So then with a summary statement, some questions we have with students, a new graduate who's approaching their first career versus an experienced person, do you find there should be a differentiation on when to use the summary statement or not?
That's great. So I think summary statements are particularly helpful if you do, maybe even more so in more seasoned professionals. Like if you have metrics that you can put into your summary statement that would help qualify how you're, a good fit for that role. I think particularly summary statements are good for more seasoned professionals. For students or people that are just finishing school, I think they can still be very helpful. I don't know that they're always, there are so many different ways to do resumes. I find it to be helpful if they have a summary statement, but if you have a ton of work experience and you're saying to me, Melissa, there's no way I can get all of this, in a format on one page or on 2 pages, you don't have to have it there, but I think it is helpful in highlighting the key skill set that you have, especially if it's directly related to the job description, those keywords that we talked about, as well as just highlighting your qualifications as a candidate.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question.
Sure. Is this Candy?
Yes.
All right, go ahead.
So my question is, if you had any leadership role like in high school, can you add it to your resume, or it should be only for college?
That's a good question. I get this question a lot from students. Like, hey, are these experiences in high school still appropriate? I think the answer is yes, especially if you are somebody who is a little bit light on the work experience that you've had, like professionally. I think that there's a way to put it in there. At some point, I think you do need to evaluate whether or not that experience is still going to be relevant to you. So like, you've grown probably a lot since some of those experiences. If your resume allows for the room to include that, that's fine. Again, cautioning you on providing too much information, if that makes sense. Again, we want to keep it concise. We want to keep it relevant to the extent possible. So in some situations, it does work to have that. If it's leadership, if it's, if you volunteered at a certain place in high school, whatever the case may be, but you have to kind of reevaluate and say, is this benefit added to the picture of my professional self that I'm trying to portray? And B, is it still relevant to the positions that I'm looking for? So the answer is maybe.
Another question is, if you had any internship then, should you put it under experience or you have to label it internship?
So that's up to you. It's another stylistic question. So oftentimes I see it under experience because it is experience. But if you are somebody that has had, 5 internships, you could theoretically create your own internship section to list them under. But if you've had like an internship and then a part-time job and then another internship and then 2 other, if it's intermixed and there's big gaps in between, I don't know that I would make an own specific internship section, because then the recruiters are going to read through that section and say, oh, there's a gap here and here and here. And again, it's an internship, so we expect that. But if you were trying to alleviate that, you could just put it all under experience to alleviate that.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
Hi, Melissa. My name is Joy.
Hi, Joy. How are you?
Hi, good. I'm one of the career team members. And I just wanted to go back to, in your presentation, you mentioned avoiding controversial interests. And I wanted to know if you could share some examples with students, what might be considered a controversial interest.
Yeah, so I think it depends. It would just be something that I've seen some things like under interest, so maybe not like, or under like hobbies, certain things that might, especially you have to know the culture of the company that you're applying for. If that is something that might be very opposite of what the values are of that company, or what, it's fine to have that hobby, that's totally fine, but I just don't always know that it's appropriate to put on your resume. So I'm trying to think of an example of this that might be a good controversial. I would just say anything that you wouldn't be wanted to ask to speak more fervently about during an interviewing process, if that makes sense. I can't think of a good example.
No, that's fine. Thank you. Because I know sometimes students might wonder, should I put this? Should I not put this as my hobby?
I think Joy, it's a great question. I think the general rule of thumb is, hey, would I want to be asked about this in an interview?
Right.
If the answer is no, then don't put it on your resume, because as we talked about, everything on your resume is fair game. So if it's not going to, come up, organically in an interview, maybe don't put it there.
Right. Agreed. Thank you.
Thanks.
It's something that has to do with politics or something like that, that is under your hobby section, that the recruiter might not agree with. It has nothing to do with the job. You can talk about that after you get the job. So you don't need them to, you don't want to put yourself in a position where you're being judged on something unnecessarily. It has nothing to do with the job. So I think that's what we mean with the controversial portion of it. All right, we're doing great with the questions. Crystal Baez, I think your question was answered already through someone else's question, which being the key theme was to kind of cut out what's not necessary. Because I think 3 pages is, she's saying she wants her resume to go up to 3 pages, is pretty long.
Yeah, let me just add on that. And I will say this just as a reality check for those of you that might be applying. A lot of recruiters, not myself, I always read resumes in their entirety. A lot of recruiters don't. And so that's why it's so important to write concisely, because if you are writing a lot of detail, the recruiter might not even make it to the end of your first page. So it's just really important. So again, it's not the end of the world if it's 2 pages, but I would say 3 pages. That recruiter is not going to take the time to probably read all the way to the end of the 3 pages. And that's unfortunate, but it's true. And you guys should be aware of that.
Melissa, this is Candy again. Another question is it necessary to put your coursework, related coursework on the resume?
Coursework, that's another great question. I see it a lot on student resumes. I don't identify it as a necessary section, but again, if you are somebody who is maybe light on extracurriculars or light on work experience and you want to have a full, nice formatted resume, it's okay to put it in there. You can talk about that during your interview, right? You can talk about, coursework. You can talk about group projects that you might have that would be, from that coursework. So it's definitely a good thing to talk about in the interview. And so in which case it'd be good to have on a resume, but I don't identify it as a hard requirement, if that makes sense.
I think one benefit of adding coursework would be if you don't have any internship experience and you don't have any of those extracurricular activities, for you to be able to get those keywords on your resume. So if the course is totally relevant to the job you're applying for, then at least if it's going through a scanning system, the word would be on there.
That's a good point.
Thank you. Any other questions, guys? I think I got through them all in the chat.
I have another question. So Melissa, what about references, reference letters? Do you add that with a resume or not? Or
That's a great question.
Or should it be something that, you know, the potential recruiter or employer requests, or do you just take it upon yourself to attach it?
That's a great question, Donna. We do sometimes see like references available on request at the bottom, but I will say most recruiters will ask you if they need them. Oftentimes oftentimes references will come at a later stage in the process, so they typically don't need it at the time in which you're submitting your cover letter and resume. And if they do need it down the line, they'll ask you for them.
Right, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Great question from Nermine. Are there any other ways to beat ATS other than using keywords from job descriptions? Good question.
That's a great question. So for those of you that don't know what ATS, those are applicant tracking systems. And they are becoming more common, as I mentioned, in today's day and age. How to beat the ATS? I think the biggest thing, again, is knowing your job description. And I cannot emphasize this enough. And again, I know it can be overwhelming. If you're applying to 10 jobs, you have to keep track of 10 different job descriptions, but it's worth your time. So be aware of the job description that you're applying for. Be aware of the essential functions. Pay particular attention to the essential functions. Those are oftentimes going to contain the keywords that you might need in order to make it through that initial screen. Other ways to, I mean, so that's basically it. So oftentimes the way that this process works is the first initial screen is done through the ATS or the applicant tracking system where they're scanning for those keywords because in today's day and age, a lot of people, there's a lot of applicant flow, right? And so one way that you can kind of, I don't want to say disqualify any unqualified candidates, but for lack of a better word, that's what they're doing. They're getting rid of any candidates that might not have the experience or the qualifications necessary. So again, I think it's just important to, before you apply to a position, make sure that it's going to be a good fit for you and your skill set and your experience. That will alleviate some of that difficulty in trying to make yourself feel like a good fit. And then stage two is be aware of those keywords. That really is, I would say, probably the best practice in making it through that first initial screening is to include some of those keywords. Simply put, to make it very clear that you have the basic requirements or the basic qualifications that are required for that job. And the keywords are a great way to do that.
Awesome, thank you.
Add something if I can. Looks like Tamia's asking, is there a free site where you can form the most effective resume for your job you're applying for? So I wanted to mention a tool called JobScan, and Melissa, I don't know if you're familiar with it also, but it is a site that would allow you, I think you can have like one free upload essentially, but you can upload your resume and the position, the job description, and it will let you know how well you're using the keywords or essentially are a match for the content of the job description versus the content of your resume. And it can help you get on to a good track for improving that before you apply. But of course, for more features of that system, it becomes, you know, a paid subscription, but I do believe you can do, you know, one on a limited time.
You can, Shannon, you definitely can do one. It actually gives you the words in the job description that you're not using in your resume.
5 per day, Dorleen says.
Yep. So you can actually put those words in there. But the first one is free, and then you've got to, or a few of them, and then you have to pay. But you can make your resume work from the first time. And it tells you exactly the words that are missing based on, you also put in the job description you're looking at.
Okay, thank you. Is it jobscan.com?
.co. Dorleen put it in the chat in capitals, jobscan.co.
Yep,
Okay.
it's right in the chat.
Mm-hmm.
I wrote that one down, Shannon. I wasn't aware of that one.
Oh, it's really cool. So they also do something for LinkedIn as well, but that is certainly a paid feature. But it's good to know about that because you want to be competitive, as you said, for applicant tracking systems, and there is a method to it.
Right. And if that doesn't work, I've even seen people, you know, sit down, job description, resume, highlight keywords in your resume. So if you don't want to pay for that, that's another system that essentially does the same thing. Have your friend look over it for you. Say, these are the keywords. Can you find them in my resume? It's a word search, right? It's a fun game that you can play with your friends. So, you know, that's another option as well.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that? What's another option?
I was just saying that, you know, you can sit down with your job description in one hand, your resume in another hand, and you can highlight. So first of all, you'd go to the job description, you would highlight those keywords, and then you would then go into your resume and then see if you know, highlight the keywords that you have in there and see if there's opportunity to add, you know, any other relevant keywords there as well.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, guys. I don't see any more questions in the chat. Oh,
I
Jasmine.
have a question to the whole panel. I mean, there's an elephant in the room, and it's called the COVID-19. Is that going to be essentially very effective towards any future employment? And if so, if we have any space in terms of lack of space on a resume to where we know that's would take turn, you know, in that process, because it's, you know, now it's going on 3 months. I mean, is there any significant issue that we need to apply towards this or have ready our mindset for the future to look for in terms of that? I mean, it's really something we're not talking about. I know one wouldn't want to put it on their resume, but if someone says, hey, listen, where were you in the last 6 months? And you're literally not in school, but you've been a student. I mean, where does that go? How do we express it? And these are important questions because it's really our future, and it's essentially happening now. Anyone on the panel can answer that, please.
So I'm going to start with this, and then I'd love, Melissa, you to tell me what your thoughts are. This is what we've been saying, so I'd love your, the most important thing that you can show an employer is that you're tenacious and that you're adaptable, and that when things are handed to you, you know how to deal with change. And those are adjectives that should have been in your resume anyway, right? Can adapt to change, tenacious, persistent, know how to deal with challenges. One of the most important things that you can now show to an employer is how you have dealt with this crisis and what you did specifically during this downtime. For example, some students that we've worked with said, you know what? I took an extra Excel class online that was free because I realized I didn't have time to do this, but my Excel skills aren't quite up to snuff, and now they are. I volunteered to help bring food to first responders, to people in nursing homes. I looked at this horrible situation and I said, what can I do to show that I am doing something, some accomplishment to help me professionally? And if there was nothing I could find professionally, something that to help my community. There are very, very specific things that you can do. And the good news, you guys, is that no one is going to hold this against you. Everyone knows that employers were completely hamstrung and that the stock market went crazy and that people lost their full-time jobs, and employers were trying to help their own organizations stop the bleeding and keep their own employees employed. So they had to stop internships for a while. It isn't your fault. No one's holding that against you, but you can turn a bad situation into kind of when you're handed lemons, make lemonade kind of thing. So Melissa, I'd love to know what you think, but that's what we've been saying.
Well, I don't know if I can follow up after that, Julia. I feel like that was such a great way to explain that. And absolutely, I can't. That was so well said, Julia. And I guess I'll just add quickly, the only other thing, again, and Julia had mentioned it, but highlighting, like, from the employer perspective, if we see a gap, if we see any sort of, I guess less activity during this time frame, every recruiter worth their salt is going to say, okay, March, February, April, May, June, July, whatever, you know, how long it takes for us to kind of normalize a little bit more. If they see a gap in employment or a shortened internship experience, they are automatically going to go COVID. They're not going to hold that against you. They're automatically going to be like, okay, this is what happened. And that is not an indication of who you are as an employee, of who you are as an intern. It is to Julia's point, it is something that we're dealing with on a global level. So that will not, in my opinion, will not hurt you. It will not, it won't be anything. And as Julia said, it could come up in an interview, and it's a great way to spin that and say, listen, this is what I did, and it could be a really positive conversation piece as part of your interview as well.
I want to add, Melissa and the questioner, Julia, I have spoken to students who are actually doing volunteer contact tracing and placing it on their resumes as well. So it offers them wonderful experience.
Beautiful. Thank you very much, panel. Appreciate it.
Just one more, a student wrote in the chat about certifications. And in our group last week, we talked about being able to do certifications. There were a couple of free ones we found online that we can share. One was by the American Red Cross, and just being someone who can mentally or psychologically deal with COVID and the stresses of that. And so they would give you some training where you can benefit yourself as well as others if needed. So that's a good way also to gain some experiences on your resume during this time.
I have a question. So concerning those certificates that you can do, I know some of them expire like in 2 years and stuff. So let's say you did a certification program and it's expired, but you couldn't renew it. Can you still put it on your resume?
I would not put an expired. I'm sorry, Joy, you go ahead.
No, I was going to say you can, once you do it now, you can put it on your resume. You have 2 years with it. But once it expires, then yes, you would take it off because it's no longer relevant.
I have a question from Jasmine. She missed our earlier discussion on high school experience. So just a quick touch upon, she says she did a lot of extracurricular and activities and leadership in high school and not so much in college. So is it still okay for her to include the high school stuff?
I think what you have to ask yourself, the answer is yes, but Jasmine, you have to ask yourself at what point does that still provide benefit, or does it still provide an accurate picture of who you are today, right? So it's absolutely okay to have it on there. We all understand you get to college, you're busy, you have your life, you have your school, you have everything. So that's not a uncommon thing that we see. And it's okay to list it high school, I would say, on there. I would probably take it off after you graduate, just because college is going to be your more relevant experience there. And a large part is that going to also depend on, how much space you have on your resume. So if you are a little bit light in the work experience and the extracurriculars, I think it's okay to include it there. They might, an interviewer might still ask you about your involvement or, whether or not you might pick it back up, and that might be a good opportunity for you to say, oh, hey, I was involved in this, maybe I'll pick that back up too. But I think use your discretion when looking at your experiences in high school, and consider, the main question is this still relevant? Is this going to help me? Is this going to help me frame myself in a way that's going to allow me to get this job that I'm applying for?
Great. And it's better to have that than white space.
Correct.
So if you're on one page still, then that's perfectly okay. Then there's a question about certifications online, which we touched upon last week. Did anybody on the career team have that information from last week that they can share in the chat?
Yeah, if someone has it, that would be great. I'm looking it up now to find it, but if anyone finds it sooner.
I think there was like psychological CPR. There were some other ones that we went through.
Yeah,
there we go, Dorleen. Thank you, Dorleen. Okay, we did have a few more slides to get to. Melissa, feel free to hang out with us. We love your opinion, but we don't, if you have somewhere else to be, that's okay too, because I know we went over the time that we told you. I'm sorry.
Okay, thanks.
But they were such great questions that we just kept going. So Shannon, would you like to take it from here?
Yeah, well, we're almost out of time. So what I'm going to do is just jump back to our beginning here and thank Melissa again for a great presentation, great discussion.
Yeah, thank you, Melissa. You're very helpful. I appreciate it.
And so everyone who's on the call, if you could just take down this link and complete the survey, it's very quick. It will give us your name and a little bit of feedback on this session. And this will count as your attendance towards earning the digital badge for completing 3 of 4 sessions. And then I'll ask you to join us next week, Wednesday at 3 o'clock, when we discuss building your professional brand. Should be exciting. We'll also have guest speakers with us next week. You'll get invitations, of course, next week as well. But we're coming back to the same meeting space, so I hope to see you there. And if any of you would like more one-on-one help with your resume or cover letter at this time, we can certainly connect you with a coach so that you can work through your resume and kind of use the tips you picked up today, and we can assist you with that. So I'll hang on in the room for a little bit if you want to put in the chat or just tell me, and we'll make sure to connect you to the appropriate coach.
I have a question.
Yes.
So I'm reaching out to one of my professors about getting a cover letter from him, and he's asking me what I would like him to say on it.
Are you asking for a cover letter or a letter of recommendation?
Letter of recommendation.
Okay. So have you indicated what you're asking for the letter of recommendation for?
Yeah, I told him like I wanted to apply as a financial analyst and equity research. I've like took corporate finance with him.
Oh, you took the course with him?
Yeah.
And the employer is asking for you to provide a letter of recommendation?
Yeah.
Or to have a reference. So the difference meaning one is asking your professor to write something on your behalf, or to see if he's willing to speak about you and your experience as your professor.
Yeah, I think I would like to get both,
Okay. So if he's asking you for more information, he may want to know more about the organization and the position you're applying for so that he can write about you in the context of understanding what you're trying to pursue.
Yeah, I indicated that to him.
Okay.
Is that all of it, or?
I believe so. Is he asking for some clarification?
No, not really. He just asked me like what I would like him to say, and then I told him that I'm applying as a financial analyst.
Okay.
Yeah, that's about it.
Okay. So you might ask him if he's able to speak about his impression of you as a student. He's your professor, correct?
Yes.
Yes, that might be what you might need to ask him, or clarify what you're asking for from him. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay.
I hadn't realized how close to time we were. Sorry about that.
No problem.
Hello?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I joined this meeting through a link on the Mercy website. I just saw it and I clicked it a couple minutes before we started. Is there any easy way to get a notification for next week, like a link to access this? Because I don't have access to, I think I was forwarded to Handshake or something in that sense. Like,
yes. Did you receive, we invited our students via email with the link right to this session. Did you receive an email?
I received an email notifying me about the event, or like rather that this was happening, but nothing that like linked me to, like I found this link to the Zoom call through the website. That's it. I don't think I'm a part of any mailing list, if that's what you mean.
And who's speaking with me?
My name is Angela Ramirez.
Okay. Are you an undergraduate student?
I am actually, yes.
So I hope you're on my mailing list. I emailed all of the undergraduate students with this link. So let me just check and make sure that's the case.
Okay.
Do you mind privately just in the chat sending me your CWID, because there may be more than one Angela Ramirez at
Yeah, definitely.
college. Thank you.
Welcome.
In the interim, do you mind if I ask a question, panel?
Sure.
Go for it.
Hello?
Yeah, go for it, Donna.
So Sarah, you're right there. So, I mean, I have this lovely resume that I composed over the week or whatever. So excited about it. Who do I send it to just for someone to take an overview and give me pointers back, advice or changes or et cetera? Who do I
Sure.
send
So
that?
if I remember correctly, you're criminal justice, right?
Correct.
So
Yes,
that would be
forensics, right.
Marguerite Bussetti. I will put her email address in the chat.
Oh,
for
actually,
you.
I know Marguerite. So
Sorry.
I would send it to Marguerite. I
Yes.
remember sending something to her last week. So,
Yep.
okay, beautiful. So we go to her. Beautiful. Thank you.
No, my pleasure. Happy you're proud of your resume. That's so important to be proud of your work.
Well, yeah, I am. I'm very excited by this.
Good.
Sarah?
Same question. Sorry, my name is Alba, and I also have the same question.
Sure, Alba, what's your major?
Social worker.
Social work? Okay, so that would be Alan Rossetti. I'm not sure if he's on the call right now.
Hey, Alba.
Great, Alan. So do you want to put your email address in the chat for Alba?
Alba, just FYI though, I'm out starting tomorrow until Monday, so I probably won't be able to get to look at it until Tuesday. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's okay. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. All right, my email's in the chat. So just email me your resume as a Word document, please, and I will take a look at it.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. No problem.
Yay.
Is anybody doing any, can anybody look over anyone's resume for mental health counseling?
We will look over any Mercy College student's resume. Absolutely. Mental health counseling would also fall into Alan Rossetti's realm. So his email address is in the chat. And you can either, set up an appointment with Alan or send the resume, however you two decide to work through it.
Okay, thank you.
All right, my name is Gloria, and can I guess a code for nursing?
I'm sorry, you broke up a little, Gloria. Can you repeat that?
Yeah, so I want somebody from the nursing department to also go over my resume. Who can I speak to?
Awesome. That would be Dorleen Kerwin. And I think I saw her in here. There she is. She's on it. Dorleen just put her email address in the chat.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. And I see a message from Michael, a private message. For accounting, you would want to work with Gina. So if Gina, you don't mind putting your email in the chat. And Michael, we definitely know of employers who are hiring. So we can certainly help you out with that.
Okay, was that Gina?
Yep, Gina is, Gina Velazane.
Okay, so she's, just know what jobs are hiring right now?
Yeah, if you're in the business realm, then you would be working with Gina.
Okay.
Are you going to send us the survey for last?
Yes, I'm going to send the survey
personal email. So
I'm going to, we email you at your Mercy email address. That's what we have. So I'm going to send that link, and I can send it with today's as well to everyone that was in attendance today.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
What I can also do in that email is list out the coach that you might be interested in working with for your resume and cover letter.
Okay.
So if you didn't ask here today now, you can have that as well.
Okay.
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 Quick question. Is anyone available to talk to me right after the Zoom 101 via resumes and cover letters? Personally, like related to Handshake?
We actually have a staff meeting directly after this this call. So What is your major? And maybe we can get you set up with an appointment as soon as we can.
You can easily schedule with your career coach if we know the major.
Behavioral science, health service management, and I've done one with my career coach before, but through Handshake, saying about, like, the first time was the format that I did use via Mercy College, and the second one I did a different format. So, and I got an email, I think from, Samantha.
Okay, yeah, Samantha Karpaloff.
Yes, so, and I'm on West Coast time because I'm in California, so I'm flexible.
Okay, so Samantha, so you have Samantha's email. So maybe you would benefit from an appointment so you can have a discussion about the two resumes. Instead of like email back and forth, like you could talk about what would work better for you.
Okay.
So I would recommend emailing her to set something up.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. Okay, do we have everything? Does anybody else have questions? I know we went over time. Apologies for that.
My question was for Julia. I don't know if she's still on.
Yes, I am. I just have a barking dog in the background. Forgive me ahead of time. They're mowing the lawn. So go, what's your question? And hopefully my dog will be quiet.
My question was,
sorry.
I couldn't hear all those keywords that you was mentioning earlier when we were talking about changing how we present our resume during this time of crisis. The phone was,
So resilience, adaptability, flexibility. Your accomplishments should note what you have done during this time to make use of this downtime.
Okay.
Right? So instead of saying, yeah, well, I watched a lot of Xbox, maybe you say, I took some Excel courses. Maybe you show that you did something to further your major and to show that you have used this time to show that you actually took advantage of the downtime, and you can list those things on your resume to show that you have initiative or tenacious. And all of those things your career coaches can go over with you as well. But those are some of the hints and the words that I used before.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. And Julia as well. I mean, hey, listen, we did the boot camp, remember? That was a lot. Those are sessions. And this is why it was so important for me to initiate this question, because I call it the elephant in the room, but come on, it's reality, right? And I appreciate you eloquently to us and laying it out, just as real as it is today.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Use it to your advantage, as crazy as this sounds.
Right.
Nobody's been hiring. You're not behind anyone who got some great job and you didn't because you didn't do something right. Nobody got hired. Nobody's been hired. You haven't lost anything. But it does show that once the gates open, you want to be out there in front because you have worked and did the prep behind the scenes.
Precisely. Now, are there other programs through Mercy College that are implementing, such as yourselves? Shannon is so great about being prolific on reminding us. And see, this is a great idea. It's open forum, in our email.
Yep, and you know what's really important, guys? Work with your career coaches. They email blast out constantly. We're doing a ton of things. Virtual recruitment fairs, virtual employer info sessions. Read the emails from your career coaches. Reach out to your career coaches. Sarah and I are on the employer side. Any employer information we bring in, the career coaches then reach out to you guys with all of it. So any questions, just go right to your career coaches. They are on the front edge of everything that we're working on, and they're doing their own programs as well.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
And now is the push-up portion of our boot camp. So everybody has to do about 50 push-ups.
And so one of the students is asking who his career coach is. Nermeen is asking who his career coach is. So
Nermeen, what is your major?
I took down his name here.
Wait.
Okay, so Shannon's gonna.
He's interested in administration, but since you're asking, what is your major, Nermeen?
Public administration, he's saying. Oh, maybe that's his major, right?
Yes, so that would be Alan as well. So that's within the human
So
services.
Alan, if you're on, can you connect with Nermeen? And Alan is amazing and he is your career coach. And of course, Sam is saying, join us in career communities if you haven't already, but Alan can direct you. Get to Alan and he is your key to everything that we're doing. I have to jump on a 4 o'clock call, guys. So,
Thank you, Julia.
Thank you, Julia.
Bye.
Okay, thank you, everybody. We will, tomorrow, I will send out the links for today and last week and further contact information. If you missed any one of our coaches, I'll lay that out for you so we can connect you to get your resumes and cover letters ready to go.
Beautiful. Thank you,
Okay.
Shannon.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. It was so great to hear and see you today. And Melissa
you.
left us already, right?
I think she did. Yeah, she was awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah, very much.
Thank you. Have a great day, guys.
Thank you, everyone. That was helpful.
Thanks.
Thank
Bye-bye.
everyone.
Yes.